Okay. Looks like, Tyler, we are good.
Perfect. Yeah, we're all good on my end. So, um, Byron, Austin, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and resume the recording. And before we kick this off, I'm going to let you guys do your elevator pitch, which I'm sure you're totally sick of doing by now, because you just were, you were actually just as of last night have become Arch Grants winners as well. In addition to all the funding you just raised. So congratulations to you guys. I know you've been working really hard on this. Really excited for you both and you and your team and to see what you guys are going to build here. So thanks again to you guys. I'm gonna turn it over to you. Feel free to take it from here.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you so much, Tyler, for having us. Very cool last night for both Austin and I and our team to be honored as Arch Grants recipients. Pretty cool for the two of us just personally, as we actually both started our St. Louis startup journey with Arch Grants as unpaid interns like 5-6 years ago. So pretty cool to kind of come full circle and get that recognition last night. But thank you for tuning in to watch us today. Excited to talk to you a little bit about mission control and primarily the topic that we have for today, MVPs for future venture investment. Tell them a little bit about how we got to where we are today.
Might be helpful for. I'll jump in real quick and just say, first off, Tyler, thanks for having us. It's awesome to be able to share this story, as well as really appreciate the shout out on Arch Grants. We're really proud to be representing St. Louis as an Arch Grant recipient. So Byron, I'll let you kind of do the introduction and the elevator pitch, and then we'll go from there. Definitely send questions in the chat the whole way, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards.
Sounds good. So what's great is that we have the elevator pitch just as our first two slides. So my name is Byron Abrigg, Chief Customer Officer of Mission Control. Austin Smith here, our CEO. We are the two co-founders of Mission Control, and Mission Control is a B2B SaaS platform for Rec League Esports. Organizations use our platform to run rec leagues, just like they do in basketball and soccer, but they instead do it in FIFA and Fortnite. Individuals like your students, community members, employees, then use our mobile app to download, join an organization, and then join those leagues in their favorite video games. Organizations like Duke University, GameStop, Special Olympics of New York use our platform as a tool for them to gather and grow their community around this new competition that is esports. We have been very fortunate over the course of the last 2 years to grow and be able to work with some really amazing customers. In the last 2 years, as of this month, we just surpassed 200 customers on our platform that range, as I mentioned, from corporations like GameStop to park and rec departments like Milwaukee or Dallas, universities here locally like SLU, but across the nation like MIT and Duke, and even working with some professional esports teams like the Minnesota Roker. As Tyler mentioned at the beginning, we've been really fortunate to receive some recognition for the work that we've done and our team has done over the last 2 years. At the beginning of the summer, we raised our seed round of 1.75 million from some really awesome local and Midwestern VCs, including Dundee Venture Capital, Cultivation Capital, Math Venture Partners, and M25. We were named a startup to watch by Crunchbase, a rising star startup by the St. Louis Business Journal, and we're very fortunate to be honored as a 2020 Arch Grant recipient. But we've had quite a journey to get to where we are today. And when Austin and I started this back in October of 2018, I don't think either of us imagined that we would be looking at having a customer list like that and receive the recognition that we have in that time, because it was just an idea. So what I'm going to now turn it over to Austin to talk a little bit about kind of Austin and I's backgrounds that led us to starting Mission Control, and then really how we went from that idea to where we are today.
Sure. So Byron and I started as students at St. Louis University. We met the first day of freshman year. We were on the same floor. A lot of people know us together because we've spent so much time together and work a lot together. I think I saw John Basden. See your name in the list here. You know, there's a lot of people like you, John, that Byron and I have had the chance to work on things together, and it's because we're good teammates. We figured this out through studying entrepreneurship, doing feasibility studies, financial projections, and business plans, all that fun stuff from St. Louis University. We have a lot of great educational institutions in town beyond just the universities, but also the support groups like Venture Cafe that help teach people how to run these sort of feasibility studies or financial projections and business plans. And that, like, having that background or having some education in that area, even if whether it's formal or informal, is a very good way to just have a base of knowledge going forward, finding out, okay, how do I start something? What are the next steps to take, and so on? How do I think strategically? We spent a lot of time rebuilding the Entrepreneurship Club and other clubs, and launched multiple events just trying to get our hands dirty, learning about entrepreneurship and raising capital and investment and all the functions that you might think of in entrepreneurship. We were hungry, and the most important piece of all of this is the value of projects to us. And you'll hear me say this time and time again. It's just, things are just worth trying, if not just not only to have that element or that thing potentially be successful, but for the experience itself. So if you have to, make a Squarespace website for a business class project, or just to do something, whatever you want to do for a nonprofit or for a political organization or whatever you are interested in, the experience of learning Squarespace, whether or not that website is successful, adds one more tool to your toolbox to be more successful later when you work on things. So whether or not you think something is going to be successful, throw that away. Don't worry about that. Just focus on learning. And when it comes to the right project, you'll have a lot of tools to actually be successful. And then we were both interns in the Center for Entrepreneurship, where we did a lot of work with ourselves, but other students on working on things from idea to pitch, to elevator pitch to investor pitch. And that just iteration and iteration, the amount of things we were, terrible at, and the amount of things we tried really, led up to being able to do this for real. I mentioned John Basden before. We did Startup Weekend
2015, I think.
2014.
Yeah.
John, I don't know. Maybe you can tell us. But that was way back when, and that was a really good opportunity to learn how to pitch something, come up with an idea, make a good argument for something that never went anywhere, and that's okay. We learned, and that's how we like to think about a lot of these projects. After that, Byron and I both started as full-time employees at Stadia Ventures, where I was a venture associate and got to work with a lot of early stage startups and evaluate the entire sports and esports industries. Byron was the Accelerator Coordinator, where he worked directly with mentors and with these startups as a way to help guide them through their path. So we got to help startups and learn from the founders and the people who now who are in our positions now. And get to learn directly from them. And I think that's, one of the most important things we learned from that was the power of good stories and telling good stories, and to giving, value to design and saying, hey, let me tell you about, something emotional, but the solution to that emotion. And that is something that we got to learn firsthand from people who were doing it. And that was invaluable as well. So the summary of all of that is that being hungry, being here is a great step. Listening to this is a great step, because being hungry enough to learn is how you get yourself into a situation that we've been able to over the past couple of years. This isn't a short play. I mean, it's 2020. We started our entrepreneurship degrees in 2013, and then it all came, it came from there. So it's a long road, but if you can learn every step of the way, you'll arm yourself for success. At the end of our careers at Stadia, we started noticing that there was an area within esports overall that was totally missed. Traditional sports looks very similar to esports. You both have pro leagues and teams, both have amateur and minor leagues, both have college, high school, and varsity. Believe it or not, there's high school and varsity college esports teams. But one thing we noticed while investing in this space is that traditional sports had 68 million people playing recreational team-based sports in the United States. That's volleyball, tennis, whatever it is. And it's 68 million individuals. However, esports had 103 million individuals playing multiplayer games with each other, an average of 8 hours a week, and individually, in total, 2 hours a day of video gaming. A massive group of people. But while you had tons of YMCAs and Jewish community centers and parks and rec departments and youth leagues for those 68 million individuals, you had nothing for the 103 million people playing video games. And for me, I thought it was the same way. Byron and I grew up playing video games with our friends, and it was a social experience. It was how our communities gathered. And obviously with 103 million people doing it, we weren't the only ones. And that is where the idea for Mission Control came. How can we create Rec League video gaming, create a structure for that Rec League experience, but for esports instead? So this happened in summer 2018. And specifically today, from here, I want to share with you how we took that inkling of an idea, that hey, there's a market here, and we're able to move it to raising $2 million today. So Byron, next slide. The first step was validate idea. Every single time, the simplest thing you can do is to blow a simple survey out of the water. Ask the questions that you have curiosity about. Our question was, would somebody join a league, a fantasy sports style esports league? Basically where one of your friends is the commissioner, and then 9 of your friends are also in the league, and then you just play every Tuesday night. It's fantasy sports style because it's like mobile focused, or it's just with your friends. It's not like with the entire city of St. Louis or something like that. But it's not fantasy because you're actually playing it. It's not just guessing the stats of your favorite football players or something like that. So we asked, would you pay for that? What do you think? What are your interests? So we came up with this entire stat deck that we wanted to come up with at the end. We were like, if we were to go to investors with this, we want to tell them, how much money do we think we can earn from this? How many times a year would somebody play? How much money would they want back if they were to pay in $10 and every player were to pay in $10 and they were to win? Would they want 90% of all of their proceeds back, or would they want 98? What's standard? How much could we take off the top, or something like that was the core question. And we asked these questions, and we were able to calculate, okay, if these are the assumptions we need to find out in order to show what the cost and expected revenue would be. Those are the questions we asked in the survey. We pushed it out really hard. I mean, this is, surveys are easy to say, oh, I tossed out a survey and got 14 friends to respond. That's nothing. You got to get like 300 people to respond, push it to the education institution, push it to every friend, ask every group on Facebook to respond. The whole point is you really got to find real knowledge out. And in every step along the way I guess the big experiences that we had with pitching businesses, surveys and pushing out surveys to like hundreds of people and actually getting them to respond was the number one reason why we knew where we should go next and what we should focus on. And it's simple, but it's a big step to us. So the survey resulted into a website. I believe that's next, right? Yeah. So we built a website on Squarespace. again, like I said, we had learned Squarespace earlier. We don't know how to code. I think this is one of the biggest things that is important to push along here. Byron and I are business side people. We are not developers. And this is a very tech heavy idea. And how are we going to get from point A to point B? Well, everything's about what we had, a couple of advisors tell us is do things that don't scale, do things that don't make sense in order to prove your point. And we did that by creating this business on Squarespace. And it looked, the crappy logo and, a stock photo and how it works. And here's how you create or join a league. And just doing the work on the back end in Google Sheets. That's all it was. It took, a couple of weeks to put together and pretty up and figure out how we were going to do it. But by the time we had started this business on October 1st, by the time November 15th rolled around, we were operating leagues and saying, hey, this is a real deal thing. How can we move forward from here? So what we learned very quickly is that people enjoyed it. We were onto something. The idea of Rec League Esports made sense, but the business model was not quite there. It would be a very push on user growth, a very heavy push on user growth, focusing on friends alone. But one of the things we noticed, and from, again, having lots of conversations, which is a key piece to understand, I would say, is having starting to seek feedback and finding people in the industry and in the area that you're trying to seek and starting to ask for feedback. And we started doing that. We took them, hey, look, we're running these leagues. We're getting great feedback. We actually have some good, we have some money coming in the door and we're going to have to pay out, rewards and stuff like that. But what do you think? And some of the people were like, that's a good business model, but it's not strong enough to raise money off of. And what we learned was that, hey, did you know that rec leagues who already exist are looking for esports solutions right now? Or wouldn't you think they'd be willing to pay for software that does it? And the answer is yeah. I mean, if you have been to college or in college, you would know that IM Leagues is a software that it's a website you can go to and find out where your college intramurals are at and sign up for those leagues and so on. That is a software used by the St. Louis University campus rec department, and also by 98% of other colleges in the United States. At the same time, you have 5,000 different parks and rec organizations in the United States who have over like 2,000 people in their city or something like that. And those are also groups who would be willing to pay, was the hypothesis, who would be willing to pay for software that helped them organize not only, on top of their soccer and basketball that they already offer, but FIFA and Fortnite, esports, Rec League Esports. So we found that out and we're like, okay, let's test that. So with that same website and same Google Sheets model, we got 3 universities to give us feedback. We got 3 different universities to help actually run with us in the spring of 2019, run Rec League Esports. We didn't charge them. We just said, we just convinced them to be on our platform. We said, we'll do all the work. We just need to test this out. And we learned a lot of interesting things. We had, this is how Byron ran the leagues in late 2018, early 2019. We would ask everybody to submit their scores via Google Form. We would text people to just get their notifications out. Hey, you have a game tonight. We would receive that stuff and put it in here. But what we learned by the end of this is A, what people liked, and B, that there was validation in the model, that we knew that people liked Rec League Esports and that organizations like campus rec organizations or parks and rec organizations were willing to pay for it. And that's a big step for us. So we took those learnings, put it into a pitch deck and said, hey, this is what we know. We think we could, take, $100,000 and go run with it for a little bit, go hire a dev firm and see what we can build. So we built a perspective on our expenses, and we're like, okay, this is what we can build. We're gonna build a MVP with actual tech developers and see where we can get with it. So we started this process as soon as we started the testing, but it really took off once we had those details on universities actually on our platform and actual data coming back saying that people liked it in January of 2019. This led us through all of quarter 1 2019 and quarter 2 2019, where we started engaging with an actual developer. Once we were able to engage with that developer, because we raised that capital successfully, we were able to just take that MVP to the next level. What's on this? Go ahead, next, Byron.
Yeah.
So we hired a dev shop. They were based in Boston, but outsourced to India, and we had them build our beta product. That was released in September of 2019, and we, over the entire summer of 2019, just called college rec departments and asked them to test out our product. So it was just cold calling. It was crazy, as many as we could hit. And by the end of that, we got like 65 different groups to sign up. I think, yeah. And then we had about 35 actually dive in and try the product that fall. What was really neat is that again, to that time, we had tried to raise off of that fundraising again in the summer, saying, listen, we're building a product. But the reality was we didn't have the next level of stats that was needed to prove that we had value. We had tested our very basic MVP, but we hadn't built our beta product yet. And that wasn't good enough for people. So that's something that we learned, and we failed at along the way. But when we finally did release to those 35 people who actually did, those 35 organizations who actually did try it in fall of 2019, the data started flowing in. And once that data started flowing in, people were like, "Oh, this is real. The feedback is accurate that this is something that's valuable." So as you can see, it went from 4 friend leagues in 2018 that we tested. Then we kind of pivoted to say, oh wait, we're actually going to build a business for organizations, and we had 3 of those in early 2019. And we used that to learn, oh, we need to build a real scalable product here, and we did that in late 2019 and tested that. Then we started to get some outside validation because of that. We raised our round. We got the future of sport. We raised our pre-seed round of $300,000. We had the Future of Sport Lab program, which is a program up in Toronto, allow us to join their program and test some things with the Maple Leafs Sports and Entertainment Group and things like that. And then we had GameStop, the corporate organization, actually start looking at our product as a product solution for them in their stores. And as soon as those things started, things really started to pick up steam, because we had proven every step along the way that there was value here, and we kept on upping the ante. We finally hired some advisors from the industry, like top tier names, people who know what they're doing, people who can give you, we joke about this a lot, but you talk to them for 10, 15 minutes and it feels like you've learned like 8 hours worth of knowledge, because of how intelligent they are and how much they know about exactly what you need to learn about. Because they've been there. So we did that, and as soon as those that happened, we were able to bring on advisors, and that led us to raise that funding in the fall of 2019, but also give us a couple of months to focus on getting the true data needed that institutional seed investors need. And that, again, every step of the way, not only are we proving more about what we did and what we're doing and the stats that prove that this is valuable, but we also know what the next step wants to hear or wants to have the answers to, the questions they'll ask, essentially. Not saying, hey, we're going to just say what they want to hear, but more so it's like, we're going to go, we know the questions they're going to ask, so we're going to go do that now. And when you're talking about seed fundraising, they want to know, in our line of business, software as a service, they want to know how much is each customer worth, what's their annual recurring revenue, how long will they stay? So for us, we say seven years based on sports rec league management from our advisors. How much it costs to acquire that customer, so the customer acquisition cost, and then how big of a market is. Those are like the 4 science, like numbers-based questions that the seed investors have to know in order to make it, valuable. So once we were able to answer those, because we had built the beta product, we tested against 30 organizations, and then we were able to actually focus on gathering those 4 pieces of data with some confidence. Once we were able to put that together, it was a whole different story. We were actually able to provide mathematical equations that said there's something here to institutional investors who are willing to give us millions of dollars to try it. And that's what it all comes down to. We early on weren't thinking that we would have a paid software. And I think that's one thing that Byron highlighted here in the slide, that we didn't think that we would have, that people would be willing to pay us, or organizations like SLU, Campus Rec would be willing to pay us to use a software for esports. We thought esports was way too far out there and nobody would understand or care what it was about. Because we were testing stuff along the way, when we launched those 30 organizations, we very quickly realized that people were willing to pay for this, that they had been looking for it, that 1 in 20 organizations had tested something in Excel themselves, but that 11 in 20 organizations were actively looking on how to do esports, but just didn't have a solution. This all came from that hunch a year earlier that there was a hole in the market. And it took us a year to find out exactly where that hole was and where somebody was willing to pay for it. And so we started building the product exactly to that. And that's how we were able to calculate those numbers. It's different for different business models, but the biggest key thing is, if you are trying to find, raise money from an institutional seed investor, or just raise money from angels, from a pre-seed investor, ask before you ever go out to them and ask them for money, ask what they want to know. What are the questions they're going to ask? Have those questions now. We are, a series seed company. The next thing we do is raise a series A if necessary. And that is plenty far in the future. But conversations I have now with those potential investors would be, hey, what do you want to hear? What are the numbers that are important to you? And what should I then focus on for the next couple of months in order to pull that off? Once we had these numbers, we started to do a countrywide fundraising sprint. The best way to do that is in a short amount of time. In 30 days, I hit 21 cities, took 26 flights or something crazy like that, and had over 70 meetings. And that was all just off of one 4-sentence email. And that is putting it together is just showing people that, all right, we have traction. We're mission control. This is what we do. We are currently working with Duke, GameStop, blah, blah, blah. And we've launched our seed round. We're going to be in your city on X date. Can we meet? That was the email. And that's how we got 70+ meetings. You get introductions from that. Other people introduce you to each other. But when you say we're doing it for 30 days, that's how we were able to kind of actually focus our efforts. From there, things got crazy for everyone, for the whole world. COVID hit. For us, it was different because we're a digital community gathering platform, and that's what people need, is digital communities right now. So we saw some growth from 50 customers to 150 customers in 3 months, and that helped buoy some of what people were looking for. We actually had some of this lined up prior to COVID, but this only helped our case. Once we were able to prove these numbers and show that we can work and grow as a business during COVID, we were able to end our fundraising, continued our conversations to term sheet, and then finally close that. And that's how we ended up raising that $1.75 million seed round that has really buoyed our growth since then. And that's mission control. That's a lot of detail about how we went along each step. I'm happy to explain more. Byron's got a lot more, I'm sure, as well. But we'd really like to open up to questions.
So there's a couple in the chat. Jeremy, if you can unmute, I know you threw something in there. You were talking about the 4 areas of data required to secure confidence from an investor. Yeah. Start it off, so let's go ahead and just do that.
Yeah, let's fire those off again. So those 4 areas that I find really important. And again, they're different for every stage, they're different for every investor, and they're different for different business types. Ours is a B2B SaaS business, and what matters there is, first thing is, what is the annual recurring revenue? What will this organization pay to use your software every year? Then how long will they stay on the platform? So how long do you expect an average person to stay on your platform, or average company? For us, it was 7 years. There's ways to calculate that, but we had no way of calculating that because people were only on our platform for like 2 months or 3 months. So we had to actually use a number from a similar industry, 7 years, and say, hey, that's how long we expect them to be on our platform. You can look how to, the customer lifetime. You can look how to calculate that sort of stuff up, but that's what's important. And what they're trying to get to is what is the lifetime value of customer. You know, it's just the annual recurring revenue multiplied by the amount of years that they'll be around. That shows you over time it costs, you know, for us it's $30,000 after over 7 years. After that, you try and find out what's your customer acquisition cost. Customer acquisition cost is, you know, how much does your marketing and sales, you know, cost to get that person on board. For us, it's like, you know, $1,300, $1,500 early on. These are very early numbers, but that's what we had learned. We're able to say, hey, if you spend $1,500 and can get 30,000 over 7 years, that's a win. And that core math was able to say, okay, well, let's just repeat that, and you can make some capital off of this. The fourth thing is your total addressable market. That is simply a best way to do it is essentially a bottom-up calculation of all the customers you could possibly have on your platform. For us, it's every college campus rec organization, plus every parks and rec organization, plus every private rec organization in the United States as a domestic total addressable market. As we add other industries, or as we want to expand internationally, that TAM, you know, blossoms. But that's how you calculate those pieces.
Looks like we had a question about revenue to date and revenue positive. So and during that alpha test that we did, it was funny. We actually became technically revenue positive during that time because we had like $400 that people paid in those private leagues, and I think we made like $27 or something off of it. So we, you know, technically we're revenue positive back in the day. But as Austin had mentioned, when we had that beta product and we first went to market last fall, the first, you know, 30 plus organizations that were on the platform, we had given them the software away for free. But during that time, we learned about that appetite for that revenue or that willingness to pay. And so at the beginning of this year, then we started charging trial fees for organizations to come on and use the platform. So every organization that has come on to the platform since the beginning of this year has all paid to have access to that. We have now rolled out annual subscription models and launch fees, and also are still taking those transactions. So we have been very fortunate to be revenue generating this entire year, and are really excited by the growth that we have in store for that. Still certainly early on, and, you know, long way from being profitable, but certainly on the right track so far.
Currently, we have over 200 customers. So that's where, you know, again, you can do the math in some ways, but you take the annual recurring revenue multiplied by 200 customers, and that's our revenue. But, you know, as far as getting profitable, you know, that's just a when's the best time and smart for a company that's scaling, because you're always spending more money to scale more. So it really just depends. On that one, it just depends on where you should be. For us, we're a high growth company. We're focused on that. So focusing on profitability at the right time is something that we're very concerned about, but also revenue growth is our primary concern. Let's see. Our 60-second elevator pitch, what to investors that is. So our tightest version, Byron kind of said it earlier, but Mission Control is a platform for Rec League Esports. We help communities gather and grow by allowing organizations to have the tools to offer rec leagues, just like soccer or basketball, but for esports instead. Popular video game titles like Fortnite, FIFA, or Overwatch. We currently we're a B2B SaaS business based in St. Louis. It currently works with Duke University, GameStop, and Special Olympics. So it's a little bit more exciting than that. I'm going off the top of my head here, but mainly it's saying who we are, and it's very clearly stating Mission Control is Rec League Esports, and very clearly and very simply. Then kind of going back to purpose. Our purpose is to gather and grow communities. That's what we care about, the social experience. We want people like me and Byron growing up to have a reason to spend time with their friends. Then it turns to how do we actually do that? And that is by giving them the software and tools to offer rec leagues for players. And then we kind of make a, some sort of something to draw people to. So just like the rec leagues you already know about, summer softball or so on. And then, and always say this, even if it's something small or whatever, you mention traction. Say, I like to say we're from St. Louis. I like to say that we're B2B SaaS because that's important for somebody's mindset when they're understanding more about your business. But saying that we work with Duke, GameStop, and Special Olympics gives you validity that nothing else in your statement will give you. Like, everybody's got good ideas, but that validity changes the entire statement. So very straightforward and simply state what you are. Talk about your purpose, relate it, say how you do it, and then relate it to something. And then lastly, give yourself some validation. And I think that's a three sentence thing for us. And so that's how I structure elevator pitches.
How did we arrive at the investment number amounts for our rounds and plans for those funds and burn rate?
It's a bit of a conversation. You can say, hey, we'll spend $50 million on growing this company. That's great. But then it doesn't give you any room to say, hey, how much is your company worth and how much are you willing to sell? And also, what's a sensible growth to continue to test this over time? So we put our numbers out there. We decided what our goals are. Again, our Series Seed needs to get us to Series A. And understanding a little bit of those conversations along the way is that Series A cares about $1 million in annual recurring revenue. So that means for us about 750 organizations. So when we're putting our seed together, we have to calculate how much effort will it take to get 750 organizations, because 750 organizations is what a next step needs. So it's thinking 2 steps ahead is what it really comes down to. Then it's a conversation. It's a conversation with the investors and your team members and the future team members who are going to lead you around. So that's what we did. I think we went out saying, hey, we're looking at a couple $1 million. We landed at just under 2 million, and decided not to go over that because we didn't want to sell more equity. And that's it's a conversation. So, we decided that we can get to 750 with the numbers that we have now, or provide future revenue streams. So that's why we decided and landed on that number. What is the plan to use of those funds? I mean, most of it goes to sales and product is what most of it goes to. We have a significant investment in customer success as well, because a lot of our advisors tell us that that's what success keeps customers, and that's the cheapest way to continue to get revenue in the door is making sure your customers are happy. So we've got 3 main departments: product, sales, and success. So product and sales, and product especially, are the ones where we're spending that capital. Our burn rate, our plans for those funds, I mean, we've got 16 to 18 months of runway with a burn rate under $100,000, but pretty quite high up there, but also going down over time. It's pretty standard for, if not conservative, for the amount of money we raise.
Do we plan to develop a B2C service to connect single players to sponsors or communities? I'll actually take that one. So as Austin kind of originally talked about, our very first idea for Mission Control was a B2C business model. But we saw from our time at Stadia and evaluating other companies and working with B2C companies that can be a really difficult journey. And a lot of the esports startups out there are B2C. We saw B2B as a real opportunity to distinguish ourselves and be unique among the market. So all of our focus at this point is being B2B. However, we really are a B2B2C company, because at the end of the day, while our software is being purchased by an organization like St. Louis University or YMCA, their end user and the end user of our mobile app is a consumer. So it's on my team's responsibility to help our organizations become better marketers to their community, to their consumers. So we are thinking a lot about what additional marketing resources can we be pouring into social media and search ads, search engines and so on and so forth to help our organizations find more success and attract more consumers to them. In terms of us though completely going B2C, it's something we've thought about. It frankly is something that's far down the road for us. We haven't forgotten about the idea of having friends-driven leagues, but for us right now, we think that there is a very large ceiling for what we are doing right now and going B2B, and aren't looking to change that right now. Certainly open to conversations as new sponsors or opportunities come along that could make that more interesting or worthwhile to consider sooner.
Yeah. So all of that stuff is definitely core to us. On the sponsor side, I think there's a lot of interesting pieces there. One of the things that I just want to add on top of this is that it's incredibly important to stay incredibly focused. There is a lot of fun that we can have with this business, a lot of different directions that are incredibly relevant, and we have a fun time brainstorming all of those pieces. But you have to stay focused. We can do all of that; it's possible. But that doesn't mean we should, or that with our limited resources and focus, where should we be spending our time? And right now we're very heavily focused on that B2B. Let's provide a very good software tool for organizations. And that can expand to a lot of things over time, but that's what we're going to focus on now. And staying focused is incredibly important. Let's see, what is our strategy for attracting Series A investors? So, I mean, number one, it's just the best thing you can do for yourself is just go out and execute. Now that things are a little bit different at this level in the game, because while pre-seed and seed is all about getting those tests further out and proving that there could be something here, now we already know that there's something here. That was our last thing that we proved. Now the question is, can we scale it? So it continues to be a test, but like I said, those 750 organizations is what gets us 1 million ARR. That's what we need to focus on essentially. So that is where our attention is now. And if we're able to do that, attracting Series A investors becomes much less of a task. They come to you. You can share that knowledge, that traction with them, and a cold email can result in a very good conversation. But other than that, I mean, a lot of things are relationships. And I will say that introductions to good people is the best way that you can get investors interested in what you're doing. A warm introduction to people who are equal to what your company is at. So whether it's an introduction to an angel at a pre-seed stage or a seed investor at a seed stage or something like that, that's what matters. So what we are doing at this phase of our life cycle is just having conversations with people that we already know through our venture capital experience at Stadia and through our fundraising experience in the past. A lot of these are still relevant, but then also fielding introductions or finding out who we might want to talk to. At some point, we might more aggressively do let's go find people we want to talk to. But right now, it's a lot of fielding and just keeping warm relationships from the people that we already know are interested and are honestly great people to talk to for feedback. I think that's one of the best things about it. A lot of the Series A investors I know are incredibly intelligent people that I really want to know, regardless of them possibly giving me capital, and investing in this business for Byron and I to continue to build it. They're just smart people. They have great thoughts, and I would love to just be able to take those thoughts and put in this business. So having conversations, it's very informal right now. I do keep track of everybody who could potentially invest, and when I talk to them and all of sort of that stuff. And at some point, we can, I'll go after, make sure I message everybody and say, hey, I will do that 30-day investor trip again and say, hey, we're starting our Series A investment, search, and let them all know. But until then, it's just being human and having conversations and creating a good relationship and being kind.
One thing to add, or two quick things to add on top of that. There's one thing that I think just kind of summarizes what Austin just said, and hopefully is a takeaway from today, is if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. A big reason that we were able to build those types of relationships that we did, from just general mentors and advisors to investors, is you start building those relationships when you aren't looking for anything specific. So that then when the time comes that you actually have an ask, you have a relationship to already build upon. So that's what we did for our seed investors. It's what we're doing now for our A investors. It's just building that relationship now when we don't have a specific ask, so that when that time comes, we've already got a relationship built. One other thing, though, that I think is important to think about, and was one reason why we went with the firms that we did when we raised our seed, is we wanted to work with companies and VCs who have an interest in investing maybe smaller amounts in earlier stage companies, so that they can get to know you. And then one day when you're then looking to raise your A, they're then ready to write that check. So we were always thinking 1 or 2 steps ahead, that when we came to, we really wanted to take smart money with the round that we raised. And part of that was saying, hey, this firm and this firm, they really like to get in early with companies, so that they can get to know them. And then when the time comes that they want to go out and raise an A, hey, they've already got a great relationship with them and they're ready to write that larger check. So that's something to also just keep in mind. If you're in the fortunate position to be able to choose, think about, okay, who can be strategic in the long run.
All right. I think unless you guys if you want to have time for one more question, maybe,
Sure.
and then we can wrap it up. I know you guys probably had a long week, so we'll do one more. We'll let you guys get some rest, and then we'll call it a day.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So first off, thanks everybody for the great questions. Brad, appreciate the compliment. Giovanni, there are other softwares for competitive esports, I should say. And there's also software for Rec League traditional sports. And how much do we study them? So that's a great question. So how much do we study these other softwares? Well, we looked at Rec League traditional sports a lot, because that's what we wanted to build. We also looked at these other esports areas, and we're like, yeah, it's important, but they're also neither one of those things were extremely fancy, right? They didn't have to be much. They're not groundbreaking. Leagues are not groundbreaking. Tournaments are not groundbreaking. Single elimination brackets on a whiteboard, that's not too fancy. But it's about that underlying purpose that I said in our pitch, is that our purpose is to gather and grow communities. It goes back to the original story that we gave at the beginning. Byron and I grew up playing video games with our friends. It was how our community gathered, right? Our purpose is to gather communities, and we want to give a tool to that. We think games are the medium. So it's a lot more than just a whiteboard, single elimination bracket software, right? That exists. Nobody's impressed by that. What we're focusing in on, we're like, okay, well, we like the fact that esports can host, tournaments and leagues. So we took that from pro esports. We like that that traditional sports already has major league management platforms that we can just model our business model off of more than anything else. Then we looked at fantasy sports. And I say that because fantasy sports is extremely social. I love to play fantasy baseball and make fun of my friends when they make terrible picks, or, I like to pick who's going to start on a certain day or whatever it is. That's a very exciting experience for me, but it's a social experience more than anything. And by myself, it's not any fun, but when I'm in a league, fantasy baseball league with my friends, it's a completely different experience. That social experience is what we're looking for. So we took those 3 things, smashed it all together, and that's where we got most of the things for Mission Control. It doesn't have to be something brand new. We just took something that already existed, a business model that already existed, software for esports that already existed, and a social piece that already existed, and just put it together and then marketed it to the right place. You don't have to save the world or create a monstrous new innovation to do something cool and entertaining like this. You just need to apply something that makes sense in a different way.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you guys so much. Congratulations again, and looking forward to seeing you guys continue to grow. So last thing, what's website again? What's the website address?
Missioncontrol.gg. I'll put it right here. And then you've got our emails. Our emails are just Austin and Byron at missioncontrol.gg if anybody wants to ask other questions.
All right, great. We'll end it here.